Right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today. I'm Christine Flynn, the grant manager for the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program. And before we begin, I want to thank everyone who is rejoining this session from our original session on Wednesday. Unfortunately, my computer and internet decided they did not want to connect anymore. So I appreciate you all coming back today and giving this presentation a second shot with me. So today we're going to discuss completions and transitions as they are recorded in the Illinois Works reporting system, or as we kind of call it, IWRS. So this session comes at a really opportune time because many of you are getting to the point with your first cohorts where you're getting to completion, you're getting to transitions, and this session was really inspired by those programs who have already been going through this process and came back to us to ask, what is a completion? What is a transition? And not so much the definition of those, though I am going to go over those definitions today, but what does a completion look like in Illinois Works reporting system? What does a transition look like in the Illinois Works reporting system? So I'm going to answer those questions today. But before we jump in, there's just a couple of housekeeping items I want to discuss with you. So the first one is please ask questions during this process. I know many of you are going to be going through this process for the first time. So if you have questions, you just need more clarification about something, please go ahead and ask questions during the presentation. There will also be a QA session at the end. During that QA session, please feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself. During the session, I would just ask that you please go ahead and do your questions in the chat. That will just ensure that I can get through the whole presentation. So I will either answer your questions during the presentation or during that QA period. The second item is this session, like our others, is going to be recorded and will be available to you on the Illinois Works Partner Guide, along with the slide deck for today. And then any documents that I talk about, any links that I talk about, all of that will be available to you in a follow-up email that you will get later this afternoon. And the third item I have for you is actually just a plug for next month. We will be joined by Maurice King, who is the Vice President of IBEW Local 134. And he's going to be talking about how to build those long-term relationships with registered apprenticeship programs, with unions, to really help those transitions be successful. So that is going to take place July 20th at 12 p.m. If you have not registered yet, don't worry. I will put a registration link in that follow-up email as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to begin today by going through those definitions of the completion statuses. Then we're going to move into our next section, which will really focus on how will our office verify those completions and transitions in IWRS. The next section, I'm going to go through some helpful tools that you all already have access to that will help you verify that IWRS data. So some of those tools you may have already used, but I'm going to go over ways that you can use them to really ensure that you are checking those completions and checking those transitions. And then, like I said, we're going to end with a Q&A. So let's go ahead and move into our first section, where we're going to talk about the 6 program completion statuses. And if you would like more information about program completion and follow-up, the processes outside of IWRS, all of this is outlined in section 8 of your grantee manual. So that starts on page 124 if you are looking for a reference on those processes. So before we delve into each of these, the definition of each of these statuses, I just want to give a quick overview of how you actually change the status in IWRS. So to change a status, you will navigate to the participant profile and choose that program completion and follow-up tab. Then you're going to choose the add completion status, and you will get a pop-up window with a drop-down. And once you open that drop-down, you will see all 6 of those statuses that are in there. So you can see there's complete, complete and in transition, incomplete, post-program active tracking, long-term tracking, and administrative withdrawal. So for those of you who have been on this page already, you will notice that administrative withdrawal is new. That just debuted this week. We will have official guidance coming out about how to utilize that, the definition of that, everything. But I am going to touch on that a little bit today, since that is now in the system, and I don't want anyone to be confused about what that means if you do navigate there before the official guidance has come out. So we'll begin with the definition of complete. So this is when a participant has met all of those program requirements. So they have gotten their Illinois Works required credentials, so those the OSHA 10, First Aid CPR, and NCCR or NAB2. And then they've also met their attendance requirements and their post-assessment score requirements. So that way we know they've earned their credentials, they were in class, and they've gained that knowledge. Now, this status in particular is a little bit of a holding place for your participants who have successfully completed, but they may not yet know if they want to go to a DOL registered apprenticeship program or they want to go to an alternate outcome. So this is, you kind of have the ability to mark them as complete because they successfully completed, but they have that time to kind of work out that next step while you're developing a plan with them or waiting for them. Maybe they're just not ready to transition quite yet. So that is the definition of complete. So they're just not, they haven't made that switch yet to have their transition plan carried out. So that plan really is the difference between complete and in transition. So similarly with complete and in transition, this is someone who's completed successfully the entire program, but the key difference is they know where they're going. So they know for sure they're going to a DOL registered apprenticeship program, or they know they're going to an alternate outcome. So an alternate training program, employment, something along the lines that's just not that registered apprenticeship program. So when you do choose completed in transition, the system will ask you which way they are going to go. So I want to just really hit home that it is important that you do not choose this status unless you know where they're going. And I say that only because if you have an individual who is unsure and you put in the system that they are not going to a registered apprenticeship program, they will end up being counted as a secondary outcome, even if they actually do intend ultimately to go to a registered apprenticeship program. So you just want to be really careful that you don't, choose this status if the person really hasn't decided quite yet. Right. So the next status is post-program active tracking. So this is when your participants have completed, they've transitioned, and you're now in that 1 year of follow-up. So you're checking on their progress every 3 months, and that is the status that they will essentially stay at for a year after they leave the program. So I want to kind of go over, there are 2 ways to set this status. So I think it's important for you to understand both ways. The first way is what I showed you kind of at the top of this section, where you go into the program completion tab, you choose add a completion status, and then you choose it from the dropdown. Similarly, this is going to ask you those same kind of completion and transition questions so that we understand where they have gone. The second way is as part of the active tracking process, there is an add active tracking button on that program completion and follow-up tab. So you can see it's just below that add completion status button. And when you choose that button, it will bring up that questionnaire and it will automatically mark them as post-program active tracking. So this is just an alternate way to do that. Your team can choose which way you want to go, but ultimately this will kind of just save you a little bit of time because you don't have to go back and touch that participant profile for about 3 months after you do that complete and transition profile. So it just kind of saves you an extra touch on their profile. But again, completely up to you how you want to work that on your team. So the next status is long-term active tracking. So this is when that participant has gone through their 1 year of progress, and now they are being kind of handed off to our team for us to track for the next several years. So I know in our grantee manual and in our training sessions, we mentioned that all of this data is going to fuel a longitudinal study. So once they get to that long-term active tracking piece, that's when our team will pick up doing data matching to track them and see where their career goes. So from your perspective, those participants will still show up in your IWRS system, but there's really nothing else that you will need to do with them once they achieve that status. The next status is incomplete. So in section 8 of the grantee manual, you will see that we outline kind of 4 different completion statuses. So the first is successful completion. So that's where this complete and in transition, and then through that active tracking process, those are all successful completions. And then we have 2 others called withdrawal and dismissal. So both of those completion statuses in IWRS live underneath this incomplete status. So when you choose incomplete, you will be asked if that individual withdrew or if they were dismissed. One important piece to know about the incomplete status is that an individual is incomplete only if they have attended some level of instruction and then withdrew or were dismissed. So that is a key marker of if they are really an incomplete participant. And that's important for a couple of reasons. So the first reason is just accuracy of data. We want to ensure that we know who was in your classroom, how many participants were actually there at some point during your program. But the other piece is that if someone is incomplete, it means that they did show up for an instruction at some level. And so they're going to count towards your enrollment metrics and then, through that to your reimbursement. So you really just want to make sure that you're accurately recording those individuals as incomplete if they have actually attended instruction and then left the program, either voluntarily or at your request. So I make that point really intensely because this next new status is called administrative withdrawal. So just a little background on this status. This is intended for those individuals who go through the process of intake, they are accepted into your program, they accept that enrollment, and then come, the first day of your program, they never show up. So they never reach instruction. For them, they're kind of in a little bit of an in-between space between incomplete and not enrolled. So as you will likely all know, on your intake page in that enrollment section, you have the option to choose someone as enrolled or not enrolled. So if you choose not enrolled, that means that they either were never offered enrollment or they declined enrollment, whatever that may be. But then you have individuals who accept enrollment and then don't show. And so that is what we're calling administrative withdrawal. And this is really just meant to kind of capture that in-between category that you did in fact accept them and they just chose to never attend. So you can look out for that on the program completion and follow-up page now. As I said, it debuted on Wednesday, so some of you may have seen it. If you have previous participants who fit that, you can go ahead and update them if you don't want to count them as incomplete, or I'm sorry, if you don't want to count them as not enrolled. Please feel free to go ahead and update those to be just accurate for your data. All right, so let's move on now, and we're going to talk about the verification of completions and transitions in the Illinois Works reporting system. So once you've determined that someone is complete or complete in transition, there are going to be kind of 4 pages that our team will look at to verify that that person actually went through the program, they completed, they gained their certifications or credentials, and now they have actually transitioned into either a primary or secondary transition. So the first page you're going to go to is your program completion and follow-up tab. So you just want to make sure they are accurately recorded in the system as complete or complete and in transition. So on the kind of back end for us, if someone is not marked as complete, if someone is not marked as complete in transition, I do not look for them to be counted as a complete. So if it is not an IWRS, to us, it does not exist. So just really make sure that your individuals are accurately recorded as either complete or complete and in transition. If you mark them as complete and in transition, you will see that there is a little pop-up that will come up and ask you what is their transition plan. So are they planning to enter a DOL registered apprenticeship, or are they planning not to enter a DOL registered apprenticeship? Now, each of these forms will be each of these questions will be guided by the answer to the previous question. So for example, on this screenshot here, you can see that this individual is planning to enter a DOL registered apprenticeship program. And that then is going to prompt the system to ask you all of these questions here. So are they, this status will ask you, are they planning to apply? Have they applied? Are they enrolled? And then you can choose which registered apprenticeship program they're actually planning to join or they've applied to. Then it will ask you about their employment. So if you say no, they're not employed, the system will then just let you save the questionnaire. If you say yes, they are employed, it's going to ask you employment information. So if they're enrolled in a registered apprenticeship program, that may be around, was their enrollment sponsored by their employer? Do they have a RAPIDS ID? Items like that. And then finally, every time you fill out one of these questionnaires, the system will automatically set a follow-up date 3 months into the future. So it does that because if you're completing your complete and in transition questionnaire for the first time, this 3-month follow-up date will be the date of your first follow-up touch base with your participant. So that's just something to know that it does automatically do that for you. It is then tracked in IWRS, so you will get a notification if a follow-up is coming due, things like that. So just be on the lookout for those dates. Make sure to mark them in your calendar so you can stay on top of those questionnaires. And then the final point, and I mentioned a little earlier, if you do choose that incomplete status, the system will ask you if that individual left voluntarily or if they were dismissed. And then you'll have the option to do kind of a case note if you want to explain further. So the next page that you will want to verify all of your data is accurate on is your intake page. So for most of you, this very likely will be completed within the first week or two of your cohort. So when you go back and check at the time of completion, you're really just trying to verify that those items are in fact have made it into IWRS. So on the intake page, you'll be looking to make sure that that pre-screen assessment was added, that your application is set. Any interview information is here. So what was the interviewer's names, the score, were their interview sheets uploaded? Then you'll come down here and see, their enrollment date, their commitment agreement, wraparound service assessment, and then their career assessment. So at the time of completion, they will have, or they should have, both their orientation career assessment and their transition career assessment. So you can see here on Mickey Mouse's profile that I did not do the transition career assessment. So if I were checking this for completion, I would just make sure that I went back and added in that second career assessment to make sure that it was verified and all of that information was in the system. So the next page is training and instruction. So on this page, you're just going to want to clarify or verify that all of your attendance is in, all of your credentials are added to the appropriate modules. Again, Illinois Works is looking for those three main credentials. So we're looking for OSHA 10, First Aid CPR, and then NCCR or NAB 2. If you have additional credentials for your program, please also add those. But for Illinois Works, those are our three required credentials. And then you're going to go ahead and check, was all of the attendance added? Were all of the post-assessment scores added? Did they meet those thresholds that they don't need to make up any hours? They don't need to make up any tests? All of those things you just want to verify that they were completed. And then I want to call attention to this accomplishments box on this page, because this is a good way to kind of just spot check yourself. So if you know that your program has 3 credentials and you're only seeing 1 credential here, that's going to kind of trigger you to know that some of these credentials are missing. The same with these completed goals. So if you know this individual had training, they also had wraparound services, if either of those are not marked as complete, these goals are not going to show up as complete. So on this one, I only completed the training service, so it's only showing up as 1 goal completed. And then completed services. So again, if you know that your program has 10 training service modules and only 3 are marked as complete, then you just need to make sure to go back and mark those additional ones as complete. So kind of a rule of thumb is don't mark any of these services as successfully complete until the post-assessments are in, the appropriate credentials are in, if they're applicable, and then the attendance is in. And then don't mark any goals complete unless all of those modules have been successfully completed. So then the final page that you can look at is this uploads page. So you will see this sidebar here on just about every participant page. So right here, and you will notice this uploads link. So when you click on that, it will take you to this screen where it has captured all of the files you have uploaded anywhere on the participant profile. So you can see the signed agreement is here, the interview sheet is here. Those were obviously uploaded on the intake page and carried over. But you will also notice that I've gone ahead and uploaded Mickey's First Aid CPR, NCCR, OSHA. So we are going to be looking for verification of those items. So that just helps us know that those were actually received. It also will really help long-term if you have participants come back to you and say, they lost their certificate, they need documentation. This will be saved in the system long-term. So it's something you will either have access to or our office will have access to in the event that they need a copy of that. And then the final item I have here is Mickey's IBEW application confirmation. So this is a confirmation of that primary transition. So we are going to be looking for some third-party verification that that transition has taken place. So I'm going to talk about kind of some samples of verification documents in just a moment, but I want to make a note about these credentials. So I here have added them as individual files. You are welcome to add them in that way. You are also welcome if you want to upload one document with all of the certifications together. You're also welcome to do that, whichever is easier for your staff. I know some of you, it's going to be a little bit easier because these are going to come in at different times. So it might be easier to upload them as soon as they come in. All I ask is please be consistent in how you're uploading them. So I just ask you don't, for one profile, upload them all in one document and others you upload singularly. That will just help kind of our verification process. It'll go a little bit faster, which means that that outcome metric and then the kind of succeeding reimbursement will happen a little bit faster for you guys, the faster that you put these together. So next, let's talk about primary transition verification documents. So as I mentioned, Mickey had his IBEW application confirmation uploaded. And so that is going to be a primary transition. So the definition on the screen here is directly from the work plan, the Illinois Works work plan that each of your agencies submitted. And so we define a primary transition as a graduate of an Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship training program who has applied and has been accepted to a DOL registered apprenticeship program, or has applied and has been placed on a waiting list. So this was updated to ensure, after we got comments from some of our grantees that they can apply, but they don't necessarily have power over whether their individuals get enrolled or get accepted. We know there are specific open enrollment dates for certain registered apprenticeship programs. So what we're really looking for here is a verification that that application has taken place, that that individual is pursuing that path to the best of their abilities, knowing that that decision isn't necessarily always in the hands of you and your team or the individual themselves. So some examples of these verification documents that we have already gotten and accepted are registered apprenticeship program application confirmations. So we've gotten snapshots or scans of letters from the registered apprenticeship programs just saying we've received the application, we will reach out soon. You can supply some sort of email confirmation. So if you have a connection at the registered apprenticeship program and can get confirmation from them that they've received that application, we'll accept that. If there's some sort of application fee associated, so I know some of the registered apprenticeship programs, to apply, you have to pay a small fee. We will accept a receipt of that. And then, of course, if they have an enrollment letter, we will accept that as well. So this is not by any means a comprehensive list, but these are items that we've already received. So if there are other items that you can kind of verify this individual is going to that registered apprenticeship program, we will review them and then kind of work with you one-on-one to make sure that we can verify those outcomes. So a secondary transition is a graduate of an Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship training program who chooses not to apply for a DOL registered apprenticeship program. So these are your individuals who go through the program, they successfully complete, but then decide, they want to go to an alternate construction, advanced training, they want to go directly into construction employment. Maybe they decide that they want to go back to, or they want to go to college, whatever that might be. Those are all viable secondary transitions. And to verify those, excuse me, to verify those, you will just need some type of documentation that we can tell they have actually gone to that outcome. So a pay stub, an employment offer letter, transcripts, an acceptance letter to an alternate training program or a college. Again, not an exhaustive list, but for both of these transition statuses, we're really just looking for that kind of third-party verification to say this person is headed in this direction, they're set, and we can kind of close out their instruction and transition at this point and just wait for that follow-up process to start 3 months from now. So if you have any questions about these, obviously in our Q&A today, please ask. But if you have documentations while you're starting to enter people and you have questions, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to kind of review documents and make sure that they kind of fit what we're looking for. So next, I'm going to review some helpful tools to verify your IWRS data. So again, these are all items that you have access to already. Either they're within IWRS or they're documents that were supplied either in our grantee manual trainings, in the grantee manual, or items that I've supplied since then. So the first tool is our export feature. So on the Illinois Works reporting system, on that participant recruitment and engagement tab, you will see this export button right here. And if you choose that button, it will open up this pop-up screen here, and it gives you a plethora of different fields, intense amounts of information. It does not give you everything. So one key item to note is it will not tell you specific attendance rates or specific post assessments per module, but it will tell you if there's a red flag around attendance, if there is a red flag around post assessments. It can give you a sense of which intake uh, items have been completed. So it was a career assessment completed, was an application completed. So it does give you a lot of information. And I like this report as kind of a bird's eye view of your data. So if you are just really doing kind of a high level verification and you don't necessarily want to sit and go through every single module and every single profile, this will give you kind of a good idea of where to strategically put your efforts to make sure that those kind of big gaps are taken care of. And then you can go through your profiles and know that you're just kind of checking for minor items. So the next tool is the Student Support Needs Report. So when you click on that button, again on this participant recruitment and engagement screen and right next to your export button, you will have this report come up where you can choose a date range, you can choose what the individual's enrollment status is, your grantee will be auto-selected here. But you can really start to delve into by participant and then by module if they have an absent flag, if they have a post-assessment flag. And this is traditionally used by your student support services staff to kind of flag that in case there needs to be some sort of student service support provided. But this can also really help you dig into, which exact modules might be causing a red flag. So this report is great on its own, but it's also great as a companion to that export. So if you are on that export and you see this person has an absent flag, this person has a post-assessment flag, this report will again give you kind of a little bit lower view of which exact modules might be triggering those flags. So in this example, our test subject here is Jasmine Wright. So if she had flags here, they would show up and then I would know immediately, all right, Jasmine's every other module is great for her, but this assistance with completing an apprenticeship program application, that's a red flag, right? So whatever module might be causing that. The next tool is the participant data verification tool. So this came out in April, and it was really designed to help your staff as a job aid to kind of walk through all of the information that we would be looking for in IWRS. This will also guide you on where you can verify this information. So you can see here at the end of some of these points, there is a little E in parentheses, and that means that that can be verified by using that export report. So if you are going through and verifying data, you can easily say, all right, I'm going to pull this export report and anything that has an E behind it, I'm going to check on that, which will save you a little bit of a step from having to go profile to profile. This is also a great tool if you have multiple people working in IWRS. So I know some of our grantees have one person designated to do data. Some people, it's based on what part of the life cycle that person is working on. So this is a great tool to have kind of at the beginning of that participant's life cycle when they've just come into the program, because your outreach and recruitment people can go in and check off that they did something in IWRS. Then you have, your student support staff, they can check off what they've done, and you have one kind of central place where that information is being captured. So you can see this is a little 2-page document here, and it just really walks through a lot of what I've gone through on those completion verification screens. So the next document is Exhibit 7, which is the participant file checklist. So this was provided back in February during our grantee manual 3 training, I believe. And this was really designed for kind of those physical participant files, but this can also be used when you're verifying IWRS data and completion data, because ultimately, each program will go through an audit process. And so you want to ensure that you either have this information in hard copy or you have it in IWRS. So you can see here, again, this is divided by that life. And all of these documents are items that you should have on hand. Now, I just want to note, if you do something in IWRS and you do not have a hard copy of it, you do not have to print out a hard copy. So this is really designed to be, if you perhaps do a pre-screen assessment or an application in hard copy, we want you to maintain that hard copy as well as that IWRS item. But if you do something directly in IWRS, you do not need to print that out and put this in the participant file checklist or in your participant file. But this is just really helpful to guide through what items you might need, so you can see, certificate of completion and other documents. So talking about your NCCR NAB2. On the second page here, we have transition services. So you can see we asked for documentation of application or placement. So you can kind of go through these and just use them as a guide for what information you might need to have on hand, and then what information we might ask from you. So it is possible that instead of doing kind of an on-site audit, we will just say, hey, can you upload this into IWRS so we can verify this? And it just saves you guys a little bit of a step of having to prep for a site visit or things like that, and allows us to kind of just maintain monitoring on an ongoing basis. So that is the end of the presentation today and the beginning of our Q&A session. So we have about 20 minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and we can have a little bit of a discussion. Renee, did you have a question? Renee, I see your hand raised, but I don't know if you have a question or not. Okay. Great. Again, please feel free to unmute your line if you have any questions, or put questions in the chat.
So Christine, this is Debbie Wright. And if we have a hard time getting verification from the apprenticeship program that someone has, is there help out there for us? I mean, I'm not anticipating that, but just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are having trouble with the Registered Apprenticeship Program just not providing you verification, or you can't get it through the participant, just reach out to us and we can kind of work on that together and come up with a solution for how to verify that. So far with our completions and transitions, we haven't seen that that's been an issue. It seems like most people have been able to get some type of verification. So whether that was, someone at the Registered Apprenticeship Program just writing on a letter and signing it saying, yes, this person is verified, this person did apply, something like that. But we will definitely work with you if you are in that situation.
Okay, would an email be appropriate as well from them?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
If you can get an email from them stating, yes, we can verify that they've applied, that will work as well.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yes. Any other questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Okay. Well,
This is Johnny Robinson. So for the credentials, all you need to see is the OSHA 10 CPR and NCCER.
correct. Yes. So those are our 3 required ones. If your program has any other certifications that you offer, I know some programs do Flagger or something like that. You can also upload those there. But our 3 are OSHA 10, First Aid CPR, and NCCR or NAB2, depending on your program. Okay.
I had another question.
Yeah, Johnny, go ahead.
So I have participants that have applied to the apprenticeship programs, but of course they have a waiting period, most of them until next year. So you still put them in complete and in transition?
Yes. So they would be complete and in transition, and their plan would be to go to a registered apprenticeship program. And then if they've been placed on a wait list, there's an option on the screen to say they've been waitlisted by the registered apprenticeship program, and then you'll just choose whichever program that is. So they'll still be counted as complete and in transition.
Okay, and you would change the status with the follow-up.
So you would just change it to complete and in transition on the program completion and follow-up screen. So let me, since I'm still sharing my screen here, I can get back there. So for when you're switching it, you will just go to that program completion and follow-up, and then you'll just choose add completion status and then complete and in transition.
Okay. And so like what I'm saying is say they're on the waiting list, but when we do our follow-up calls and everything, they actually got accepted or started their program.
Yeah.
Do we have to change the status?
Yes, so that is when you will, so when you follow up with them, you'll just do this add active tracking, and it will bring up this screen where it will automatically switch them to post-program active tracking. And then you'll just update the status to say they've now been enrolled.
Okay, and you wouldn't go to that phase until they get accepted, or
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So once they're marked as complete and in transition and they have applied, if they're sitting on a wait list, obviously you can continue to help them if they need to find temporary employment, things like that. But you're not really doing an official follow-up for 3 months after you do this completion and transition, is that's really marking when they're kind of complete and out of your program now. So then 3 months later, you'll do this active tracking, and then that will automatically update them.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions. Great. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I, of course, am always available. So please reach out if you have questions about these items. I'm also happy to do completion touch bases. So I've done this with a couple of organizations where they complete a couple of profiles and want me to just check them out and walk through with them what I'll be looking for, just to get kind of my eye on it. Please feel free to reach out if you need that. And
Christine,
then, oh,
I'm sorry,
yes.
this is Mel.
Yeah.
I know you said that this is in the grantee manual on 134. However, will this video also play so that I can share this with other members on the team? Like, will you have a copy of this exact video? This was great.
Yes, I will. So this has been all recorded. So this will be added to the Illinois Partner Guide. I will also put the slide deck up there. And then I'm going to send you links and documents that I mentioned today in the follow-up email. I'm going to send you probably in the next hour or so. So all of that will be available and shareable with your team.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, of course. Great question. So yeah, like I just told Roberta, all of this will be available. I'm available for any one-off questions or any sessions you want to walk through to check your data. Before we leave, I just want to kind of do another plug for our next July Lunch and Learn. So that is, again, taking place on July 20th, 2022, from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. He is going to be focusing heavily on how do you build those relationships, how do you build long-term connections with registered apprenticeship programs, with unions, to make sure that you have those successful relationships and then can have successful transitions. So that is going to be the end of our session today. Like I said, I am going to send you those documents. I'm also going to send you a survey link, a SurveyMonkey link. If you can please just take a couple of minutes to fill that out for me, that would be very helpful. I use that to kind of structure these programs. and make sure that they are really touching on the topics that you all want to know more about or need more information about. And I'm going to go ahead and actually put the link here. I'm just grabbing the SurveyMonkey link. And I just would love to get your feedback on this because each of these is a little bit different. And this is the first one I've done where I fully presented and we haven't had a guest. So I would love your feedback on that. So I've just put our SurveyMonkey link in the chat. If you can please just take a moment. It's, I think, 5 questions, so it won't take you very long. Just fill that out for me. I would be very grateful. And thank you all for attending today. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Happy Father's Day and happy Juneteenth to everyone who celebrates. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine. Have a great weekend as